Congratulations on the award, but it's just such a beautiful film, both visually, also orally, and emotionally. So just wanted to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, I was wondering, I want to get to kind of the personal side of it later, but I wanted to first think about like the place because the cinematography is so beautiful in capturing this sense of place, and the title of the film is The Name of the Village. But it's also this place, the way that you capture it over time and the passage of time and the way that the light changes. So I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about kind of the sense of place and that place in time and the passage of time in this story.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. I'm so happy you could watch it on a big screen because it's really it would all my cinematic decisions were meant to be to allow an immersive experience.
Yes.
And I was born in those mountains, so for me it was. They sometimes say it's so good that it's not a postcard, and I say, but I was born there, so for me it's not exotic or wow. It's really I wanted it to be a film about also being mountain people. To live there, it's also to move in a different way, to talk in a different way. To so, for example, most of the actors you saw overall they're very young. They come from there because they didn't want to go to Rome and open a casting and then teach how to be mountain people. Right. So these boys are really like from there and they speak their dialect, and that's. But of course, then there are some professional actors like the teacher, the father teacher, and I brought him to the mountains and to these bars with these guys. You see that they are really the guys from the village, and I asked him to imitate them, to really try to understand how, for example, they don't show a lot of emotions. It's very and also the time question, no? So it was not just a matter of space but also of time. Um, to me it's a landscape of the soul because it's a landscape of my father and all that family. But at the beginning, it was a very personal writing, but then I found that it was also the possibility to talk about a little place in the world that in a way could be a little village in the world, wherever.
Like the sense that it could be, right, you could lift it up and put it somewhere else that,
Yeah, it's like I really like what the French people call huis clos, this little space, because they can also be like human case studies. You really, and you have a concentration, which is very cinematic. And I wanted to have very simple passages and also the same places coming through these four seasons, the church, the house, the bed, the river, the bar, and how they change during time, because the idea was to have this year in which the microhistory and the macrohistory uh, uh, were like going forth, changing things through the rhythm of the nature, through the bodies the bellies that were growing, and through this private story and the big story of the liberation from war, that always dialoguing. So the places were important also to narrative wise to see the changes, to allow me an elliptic language. So it's not like, okay, this happened. It's just you go back to the place and it changes somehow.
right. I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about the juxtaposition of the characters of Lucia and Ada, and like
And Flavia.
sorry, Flavia, yeah, and the way that the kind of the different choices that they see in front of them as a way, maybe of two different types of escape, whether it's the religious or actually like the escape physical from the place.
Yeah, talking about this elliptic language, I always try to arrive to an image that can, let's say, in a synthetic and syncretic way, tell everything without a lot of words and maybe staying there a little more. So, for example, in a moment I arrived to a moment in which they were all laying down, um, Lucia discovering love, Ada with her head in the barn, in the kitchen, and that is the position the young nuns become nuns.
Right.
It's um, and the third sister, she's laying down the sofa, discovering culture. So, all the film was meant to talk about these women in a very synthetic way and have three different destinies coming from the same tree. And of course, they had to be possible destinies from the code of the epoch.
Right.
So, for example, talking about Ada, we understand that she cannot find her place in that patriarchal society, but it's not that she ends up like saying, "Yeah, I do whatever I want." It had to be the code of the epoch.
Right.
So paradoxically, she finds her freedom into a cluster, no,
Right.
into if she had married, she couldn't have studied or
Right.
smoked or whatever. So she kind of finds her room of her own, her Virginia Woolf's room of her own
Right.
in a clusters.
Right.
And Lucia, I think she begins as a woman of that time, so very far away from us, a country girl that will marry and then through necessity, through tragedy, in order not to die,
Mm-hmm.
she makes her revolution and she becomes a woman of our times
Right.
that has to say goodbye to her baby, to go to work alone in the city. So in a way, she's also kind of the metonymy of all our society. It was interesting for me to have this film in this last year of war and the beginning of peace because it's really a transition time between something that is very far away and what we are now. So from the village to the city, from the individual to the community to the individual, individuality and maybe individualism. Yeah, from the ancient to the modern with the good and bad things. And Flavia, of course, she's the youngest. She's already a girl who will study, and the father who is such a pater familias all time, but he um, elects a woman to study. No, so he's kind of contradictory. He's very old and he also have modernity. I wanted to have a film in the past, but it's a recent past. That still dialogues with us.
Right. And dialogues with the more distant past us at the same time.
Yeah.
Great. We would love for your questions. Any questions? In the back?
Um, I really appreciated like how you had such a subtle focus on how each character expresses themselves with each other. Um, one of my favorites was Dino and Pietro when they were talking about the story about the bear. So I was just wondering if you had any like personal connection that you invested yourself in regarding to like maybe if you're willing to share anything about like your family or something like that, like how you guys express each other.
You really touched the point because Pietrin is my father. That's why you love him because I love him so much that you can feel this love. And Dino is one of my uncles, and he was really not loved. And I always found so unfair that he was not loved. That because he had such a emotional intelligence, it's one of this person who really thinks they don't go to bed before knowing that everyone is okay. No, he's the one who saves Lucia in the mountains. But it's not the type of intelligence that an illuministic person as the father could understand. It's just like, oh, he's not good at school. But he's really the myth of the little boys. And we worked a lot on this in the preparation, because I worked a lot with the actors on the preparation of the family, of the sense of family. I wanted them to really become siblings, and I'm really happy about this part because they live very near in the valley and they still meet a lot, and the parents tell me that they meet to play the film. And it's now they're really, and we worked a lot we stayed in beds together. We really I really wanted to have the feet of the other person here, and it's okay. It's your brother or sister. It's not because there are some people who think that if you prepare a lot, you lose naturality. I personally think the opposite, or at least in my way of working. I prepare a lot, I work a lot because I want I want this world to become their world. So when we go to the set, it's like family. It's like, oh, we go to the bed again, and also overall when you work with very little kids, Pietrin, he was 5, and he still didn't read, and it's an age that you like repetition. We adults, we get bored. They, on the contrary, they want to repeat. And I know because I work a lot with kids, and so I played with this, and he was like, really, let's repeat the story of the bear again and again. And it was so, and he always enters the same way, and the camera grabs this. So and also, yeah, in the days of preparation, I worked with the idea of this Dino, who is strong and big. So they were always on his shoulders, and it was a relationship that was important for me. And also, in general, to have this, like, say, Greek chorus of the children commenting the adult's life, because it's not a very spoken film. I didn't want a lot of words, and there are very concrete dialogues. But then the only one who speak a lot, it's them in the night whispering and giving us their point of view, that I really love because it's really concrete. They say the things we think and we don't say anymore. They say it in a very straight way, like.
And it also brings a nice, a lightness to it as well.
Yeah, it takes away solemnity.
Right,
No?
yeah.
It's important for the tone, of course.
There was